You're not related by blood, so I'm cutting ties. The property is all mine. On a cold winter day, my husband suddenly passed away. During his funeral, I was shaken by the sudden words of my stepson. I thought I had raised him dearly. Even though our relationship wasn't the best, I believed there was some affection reaching him. His words at the funeral made me give up on everything. So, I understand, that's truly how you feel. I vowed not to get involved with my stepson anymore. However, the one who broke that promise and contacted me was him. The next day, my son called dozens of times, but I ignored all of them. See, he did contact me. Yes, I knew this would happen because I knew the truth. Wake up. Come on. How many times do I have to turn off the alarm? The snooze function is useless. Sorry. I'm just not good in the mornings. Hurry and get ready. Breakfast is ready. Yes, I'm still tired. My day begins with handling my morning weak husband. It's a hectic daily life, but it's happy. Phew, it'd be nice if you woke up easier. I need coffee to wake up, and I have to work hard today. There's no time. But eat without rushing. I know. Married for 15 years, this interaction is normal. The comfort of these casual exchanges motivates me to keep going today. Is he still sleeping? I called out to him, but no response. He refers to my son, who is my husband's child from a previous relationship. At 45, living with my 50-year-old self-employed husband and 23-year-old stepson. I support my busy husband by keeping the house as a homemaker. Really? That's frustrating. What should we do? There's a certain tension only during this conversation. I was desperate to ease the atmosphere. Look at the clock. It's this late already. I'm off. You seem busier lately, but please don't overdo it. My husband is very kind, but there are things he keeps to himself or struggles to express, so I try to notice even the slightest changes. Don't worry, I won't overdo it. I don't have time to break down. See you. Though it felt somewhat forced. I didn't want to nag too much and sent him off with a smile. Take care. I was comforted by my kind and cheerful husband from the morning. Now, I must get on with the chores. As I was gearing up, my stepson came stumbling in, still half asleep. I closed my eyes to his unkempt look and greeted him with a smile. Good morning. Breakfast? Should we air out the blankets since it's nice weather? Ah. Sigh. As I tried to start a conversation, he intentionally let out a big sigh. It sounded more like he was pressing me not to talk to him. After 15 years, the interaction was still awkward, or rather, it didn't feel like an interaction at all. I wondered if I was being too reserved. Make sure to hydrate. You lose a lot of water while you sleep. I threw out almost nagging words, hoping for some response, but it didn't go well. I tried to speak without letting on that I was choosing my words. I just wanted to talk, but it never worked out. Ignoring was a daily occurrence. And he would glare at me as I kept asking questions. At least he wasn't shouting or rampaging, I told myself. Trying to console myself that it could be worse, but I eventually lost the words to speak. He rummaged through the fridge, grabbed a drink and a sweet bun, and went back to his room. In the end, we didn't exchange a word. Today was no good either. The distance between me and my stepson kept growing over the years. Considering his age and all, I was sorting through various emotions, while suddenly reminiscing about the past. When we got married, my stepson was 7. And I was very confused about how to interact with him. Becoming the parent of a 7-year-old all of a sudden was, in a sense, terrifying. I think my stepson felt the same. Becoming a family with a woman he hardly knew. We had met several times before the marriage, but he never got used to me. And we relied on my husband's suggestion that it would be okay to gradually get used to each other after the marriage. It must have been a huge burden for a child. I struggled not to act too parental, hoping to break the ice. Sometimes, I think this unnaturalness created a gap. Hey, why don't you talk a bit? We can't have fun conversations if you don't say anything. It's okay not to call me Mom. Let's get along. Well, it's understandable. It's a shock to suddenly have more family. Let's get along slowly, the 3 of us. Right? My husband said this, looking apologetic toward me. It was tough not having the stepson warm up to me. But I knew worrying wouldn't help. So I did my best to close the gap and get him used to me, supported by my husband. Shall we play together? What do you like? I want Dad. Only Dad. I'd like to play together, but Dad is busy with work, right? No. Go away. Ball. So, let's play soccer. You're not capable anyway. Get out of here. I didn't know what to do, and I told myself not to act like a mother. While I was overwhelmed with the unfamiliar task of parenting. There were times when I thought it was growth just to have him talk back, a carefree idea. As time passed, I hoped things would work out as he grew. But life doesn't always go smoothly. I was naive. As he became a middle and high school student, not quite a delinquent. But he hung around every day without studying much. And my husband and I were at our wits' end. Even my kind husband raised his voice sometimes. Where have you been until this time? Shut up. You're not really worried. What I do is none of your business. Not our business. How can you say that? Why can't you at least tell us where you are? But there are social commitments for young people, right? If we keep allowing that, there's no end to it. Making us worry without any contact and then talking back to us. Clicking your tongue. I'm getting frustrated. Well, my bad for being such a son. Bang. I can't forget the sound of the door slamming that time. Nor can I forget how pitiful I felt for only being able to respond in such a templated manner. Should I have scolded him properly? Even if I thought so, I couldn't easily change my way of thinking. Despite various troubles, my feelings of caring for my stepson remained unchanged. And I, ever hopeful, waited with a birthday cake I made for him. Tick-tock, tick-tock. I somewhat knew it would turn out this way. But if there was even a slight hope, maybe. I clung to that faint hope and continued to wait. It's already this late, maybe he got involved in something dangerous. It's always like this. I'm truly sorry. You're making such an effort. I just got too excited, don't worry about it. What I'm really worried about is whether he's safe. Despite thinking it might be annoying, I was too worried and made a call. Ring, ring, ring. Of course, he's not answering the phone. I called several times, but eventually, it went to voicemail. He's old enough to prefer spending time with friends over celebrating with family. Which is natural. I should have realized it sooner. Let's eat the cake tomorrow. Ah. My husband sighed deeply and said nothing more. In the end, my stepson didn't come home and was out all night. Since then, the gap has not been filled, in fact, it has only widened. There were many troubles. Just thinking about it drains me. Despite being disliked, I lived my life trying to be as close to my stepson as possible, hoping we could gradually get along. I cherished raising him in my own way. On another cold winter day, my husband suddenly died. That. The cause was a myocardial infarction. Likely compounded by his usual overwork and stress, I was told by the doctor. Although I was confused, I understood that his work situation was severe. And there were parts one could accept. If only I had been more supportive. I regretted not being able to support him more. Without time to grieve, I arranged my husband's funeral. Keeping busy helped distract me a bit. The funeral proceeded without any issues. And I barely kept myself together as the chief mourner. I had to be strong. I couldn't just keep grieving for the sake of my stepson left behind. I kept telling myself that. Everybody, I have a few words to say. My husband was a very kind and cheerful man. Despite his life still having so much potential, he unfortunately fell ill suddenly and closed the curtain on his life. I never thought I'd have to undertake such a duty so soon. I continued my speech with these thoughts in my heart. A good husband and father, he cherished his family despite being busy. And he spent time with us. I want to live on, supporting each other with my son, holding on to the happiness my husband gave us. Thank you all for coming today, despite your busy schedules. As I finished my speech as the chief mourner, suddenly, my stepson started to speak. I couldn't comprehend what was happening, as it was so sudden. I'm cutting ties with her. This person is no longer a parent or anything to me. A stranger. Pointing at me, my stepson declared that. Wait. What are you saying? Shut up. Be quiet. I was at a loss for words at my stepson's shocking announcement. To sever ties suddenly, and at such an occasion. I tried to stay calm. But it was impossible to remain composed. And I felt like I might collapse from the psychological strain. Regardless of my state, my stepson continued speaking indifferently. Dad never cared about her. He didn't acknowledge her as his wife. Only saw her as a mere housekeeper. She's not family. The surrounding crowd couldn't hide their murmurs. I was shaken by the words that my husband didn't care for me. But that quickly turned into anger. I retorted sharply. That's not true. Dad cared for and cherished me properly. What were you looking at? Both you and I were cherished by him. Dad wasn't the person you describe. Hearing this, my stepson half mocked me with a smile. And pulled a paper from his breast pocket. Can you still say such platitudes after seeing this? I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the paper. This is your marriage certificate with Dad. Dad never submitted this. This is the definitive proof that he didn't care about you. You're the one who doesn't know anything about Dad, aren't you? No way. If you doubt it, check it yourself. Saying that, he threw the paper at me. I hesitantly picked it up and verified it. It was indeed the marriage certificate my husband and I had filled out. Just as my stepson said. I couldn't stop shivering. Not from anger, but from a surge of sadness. We weren't married. Just as my stepson said, I had always been a stranger to my husband. My emotions were a mess, and I couldn't think straight. That's why I'm cutting ties with you. The property is all mine. Well, you're not family or anything, are you? You can't say anything back, can you? As I stood pale and trembling, my stepson cornered me as if seizing the moment. "I've never liked you. I tolerated you because I thought you were just a housekeeper necessary for my father's work. But I'm done with this charade. I feel relieved. Now get out of my sight." I thought I had raised him well. Even if not as a mother, I believed he had accepted me as part of the family. Learning what was truly in his heart, I felt despair. Was I really never connected to my husband or stepson? My heart fell so much during the funeral that I forgot we were at one. I gave up on everything in despair. Was love this fragile? Or was our family nothing more than a pretense? At that moment, I couldn't think of anything else. I understand. I don't want anything, and I will no longer have anything to do with you. I vowed never to interact with my stepson again. If freeing myself from this shredded mess of feelings meant letting everything else go, so be it. Thank you for your efforts, housekeeper. Days after the shocking funeral, I was tidying up the house, preparing to leave it behind. I wanted to free myself from this situation as soon as possible. Was my entire married life a lie? I muttered alone in the now empty and somewhat lonely room. That's when it happened. I found a letter in my husband's study. A letter, for me? Wanting to erase everything, I hesitated for a moment about whether to read it. But fearing regret, I started to read the letter, which contained all my husband's feelings. So that was it. With surprise, the letter dissolved all the resentments in my heart. And I cried while holding it. It was the moment everything made sense. I finally understood why my husband hadn't submitted our marriage certificate. Understanding everything, I felt pathetic for having taken my stepson's words at face value and despaired over such a piece of paper without fully trusting my husband until the end. A week later, I moved out of the house I had lived in with my husband. It was sad to leave the home where we shared so many ups and downs. But part of me felt refreshed to be free from that stepson who trampled all over the love I had given. I never wanted to deal with someone who couldn't even understand his own father properly. Well, he's a stranger now, so there shouldn't be any more interaction, I thought. However, the next day, I saw an unbelievable number of calls from my stepson. He must have learned the truth. After all that bravado, to contact me so easily. I felt both astonished and somewhat refreshed. Ignoring dozens of calls, I realized it was all pointless. The name of my stepson kept appearing on my phone to an annoying extent. I should have quickly deleted his number and blocked him. Though I thought there would be no more interactions, knowing my stepson. He might overturn any situation if it suited him. His predictable actions were almost amusing. Even after declaring he would cut ties, he contacts me this insistently. Because the situation has changed. How ridiculous. I muttered to my continuously ringing phone. My stepson wouldn't give up. Why couldn't he use this persistence for something else? He must live a life depending on others. No matter how many times he called, I had no intention of answering. Full of anger and anxiety, he must be overwhelmed. But that had nothing to do with me. He chose to be a stranger to me. What could he possibly want from me now? No matter what he said or did, my feelings wouldn't waver anymore. Ignoring the incessant ringing of the phone felt good. I felt cruel enough to not want to be on my bad side. I realized how much a person could dismiss others. Finally, the phone stopped ringing abruptly. He gave up. Seriously, what a nuisance. Relieved that the nuisance calls had ended, my peace was short-lived. An hour later, I was about to have an unwanted reunion. Ding dong. Ding dong. Ding dong. Ding dong. No way. But it was exactly that. The house chime was frantically pressed. And as I peered through the door viewer, there stood my stepson with a demonic expression. Wow, he can really go this far. Impressive action in a way. Hey. I know you're there. Open up. His voice betrayed his panic even though he was shouting. You're hiding something. What's going on? Ding dong. Ding dong. Bang. Bang. He even started banging on the door. Such a nuisance. His behavior was like a debt collector's, desperately cornered. But it had nothing to do with me. I didn't want to involve myself. Bang. Bang. I'll break the door down. Open up, hey. Dealing with him was a hassle, but I opened the door, fearing a neighbor might call the police. As soon as I cracked the door, a hand appeared in the gap, pushing it open forcefully. Why didn't you answer the phone? How could you not notice after so many calls? How dull are your senses? This was his opening line upon seeing me. Listening further was unpleasant. I could go on and on with complaints, and I was quite irritated. But losing my composure would make me no better than my stepson. I spoke calmly. What? What do you want? What could a stranger possibly want? I asked with a hint of sarcasm, feeling no sympathy anymore. It's not just about what. You knew everything, didn't you? You hid it all. And you still call yourself a parent? That's the lowest. What? Parent? What convenient talk. He can't take responsibility for his own words. Did he forget how he insulted me in front of everyone and declared I wasn't a parent? I couldn't understand a person like my stepson. Stop being silent. You put me through this. He came at me with childish words and a fierce demeanor. His face so desperate it almost evoked pity. Of course, I knew what he was talking about, but I decided to play dumb. It felt like a waste to engage with him seriously. I don't understand what you want to say. What about that thing? And who are you calling a parent? I don't have any children. I continued to provoke him as he glared at me, grinding his teeth. Actually, I might have had a son once, but that must have been my misunderstanding. So I don't have any children. And I really don't understand what you're trying to say. Sorry. I intended to remain calm. But I realized I might have spoken in a rather childish manner. This was still rather mild, though. Don't play dumb. You knew Dad had a huge debt. How can you act so clueless? There's no way you didn't know something that major about your own spouse. It's truly despicable of you to ignore your own son who is in such trouble. Just because it's inconvenient for you. Which mouth is spewing such nonsense? The desperation on my stepson's face and the absurdity of his accusations were so ridiculous that it was hard to keep from laughing. Of course, I knew about my husband's debt. But this immature retaliation only fueled my anger further. Marriage? You were the one who said I was just a housekeeper and not a parent, right? I was just a housekeeper. A housekeeper doesn't know such things. Too bad. Don't be defiant. What are you talking about? Explain yourself properly. Dealing with my unrelenting stepson was exhausting. Continuing to argue would only lead to an endless back and forth. Wanting to get rid of him quickly, I sighed and reluctantly decided to explain. My husband was self-employed and his business was doing well. We lived a relatively affluent life. Slowly, I told my stepson the truth, as he couldn't believe there was such a large debt. Your father became a guarantor for a friend who was starting a business. But that person vanished, leaving behind a huge debt. Since that person became unreachable, your father had no choice but to pay back the enormous debt. What? A guarantor? That's none of my business. And you knew about it and kept quiet? Don't mess with me. I continued my explanation unfazed. Your father was a kind man. I wish he had been less trusting of others. He knew his nature might get him into trouble someday. That's why he didn't register our marriage officially. To ensure I wouldn't be burdened if something happened. We were supposed to share these responsibilities as a married couple. What a load of nonsense. Do you expect me to believe that? Why do I have to clean up this mess? You handle it. No matter what I said, my stepson wouldn't accept it. Reluctantly, I showed him a letter from my husband. Upon reading the letter, my stepson started shaking violently. Damn it. Fix this. He kept repeating the same words, acting like a child throwing a tantrum. And I had no inclination to reach out to him. If it hadn't been for that day at the funeral, even knowing this truth might have made me want to support him. That's the situation, so please go home. There's nothing more to say to a stranger. Thank you for your efforts. I returned the words my stepson had hurled at me during the funeral. I won't accept this. Didn't you hear? You and I are strangers. If you don't stop, I'll report you to the police for harassment and extortion. It seemed my seriousness finally got through to him, and he grumbled as he left. The exhaustion felt like it was years in the making. But my spirit was surprisingly clear. Thanks to my husband's love, I had managed to fend off the devil. My husband, knowing something might happen to him, had made a gift of his assets to me in my own account, ensuring I had a considerable fortune. This ordeal made me feel the love my husband had for me. It taught me that a marriage certificate was just a piece of paper. What truly matters between people is the time and memories shared. The time I spent with my husband is my most precious treasure. Thank you. My heart finally found peace. Meanwhile, my stepson, having inherited all of my husband's property, also took on the massive debt and ended up having to sell the house and everything else, leading to a life of penury. This was probably because he never made any effort and didn't engage with people properly. Later, he apparently went begging to my husband's relatives for money. But of course, they wanted nothing to do with him. Originally, my stepson had relied on our family's wealth and dropped out of college, never seriously looking for a job and only working odd jobs occasionally. Now, it seems he's living day to day. Well, it's no longer my concern. I vowed to live the rest of my life cherishing the memories with my husband, who had cherished me, not splurging but living meaningfully.